Shadow Hack. Chapter 761, The Fatal Blow of the Two Swords. Lee Yoon-mu's consciousness almost disappeared because of the attack. If it were not for the system doing its best to keep him awake, he would have truly lost consciousness. He was only a mortal, so surviving that was really not easy for him. Humph, you mortal! Fighting with this senior to this extent shows that your strength is formidable. But this senior hasn't tasted a mortal for a very long time and cannot let you go easily. The black Kylin suddenly opened its mouth wide, wanting to swallow Lee Yoon-mu whole. However, at that moment of imminent peril, the two swords fused into one, and golden energy blew the black Kylin aside. The sword spirits of the two swords appeared suddenly. They were floating in the air, but not quarreling like before. Instead, they pointed at the black Kylin as one and said, "In front of us, why aren't you surrendering, black Kylin? Sword spirits? Haha, this senior is truly very lucky today. Not only did I encounter a mortal, I also encountered two sword spirits. I can eat until I am full. I've gotten so tired of these gods and devils." At the sight of the savageness of the black Kylin, Lai Huo and Han Bing glanced at each other and said, "Let's eliminate it. We have to crush its arrogance. It seems like it doesn't understand that the two of us combined into one, so let's make it experience our strength." Since Lee Yoon-mu retained a hint of consciousness, he looked up at the two swords who had combined harmoniously. He wanted to close his eyes, but the system warned him to not close them or else he might never be able to wake up again. In Lee Yoon-mu's body, the system activated the self-regeneration ability, and his body began to quickly restore itself to its original state. Lee Yoon-mu was just a mortal, and earlier, his 5 viscera and 6 bowels were almost shattered by the black Kylin's heavy attack. Fortunately, he had only received severe injuries and hadn't died. If it were not for the system keep him awake, however, he would have still lost his life after falling asleep. Devil punishing and god slaughtering swords suddenly transformed into a ray of light which was as fast as a bolt of lightning. They attacked the black Kylin repeatedly, leaving countless injuries on its body. Regardless of how the black Kylin tried to evade, the combined power of the two swords could punish all devils and slaughter all gods, while the black Kylin was only a divine beast. After the two swords had combined, all the devils and gods were like ants in front of them. If they encountered a master god, their strength might not be enough to threaten them, but when facing ancient god-level experts, they were like overlords. When Lee Yoon-mu realized that, he took in a deep breath. Under his gaze, the black Kylin gradually fell into an inferior position, and its movements began to slow down. Relying on the hint of consciousness which had been retained because of the system's help, Lee Yoon-mu stood up and then calmly said, I want to destroy it personally." That ray of light seemingly had the same thoughts as Lee Yoon-mu and suddenly appeared in his hand. Lee Yoon-mu tightly grasped it while Lai Huo and Han Bing told him, "Mortal, you mustn't force yourself too much. You aren't this divine beast's opponent." Before the two sword spirits could even finish talking, Lee Yoon-mu plunged the ray of light in his hand into the black Kylin's body. Countless streams of blood flowed out from various points on the black Kylin's body, and it spat out a mouthful of blood before toppling down to the ground. This senior. The black Kylin turned into a human who had a hand over his chest while blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He coldly looked at Lee Yoon-mu and said with an incredulous expression, this senior surprisingly lost." Lee Yoon-mu, who was gasping for breath, beheaded the black Kylin with the ray of light, which dissipated afterwards. Lee Yoon-mu knelt down on the ground then. There wasn't much strength left in his body, and the two sword spirits promptly helped to support him. I said, I will defeat you," Lee Yoon-mu slowly said. The black Kylin suddenly began to howl with laughter. "Mortal! This senior surprisingly lost against a mortal. Ha 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 ha, but youngster, do you really believe that I have lost?" Without waiting for Lee Yoon-mu's reply, he began to shine with a purple light, and his figure appeared like a tattoo on Lee Yoon-mu's wrist. The two sword spirits suddenly shouted out loudly. Repulsive, he is surprisingly using the spirit word Gatha. Stop it from saying anything more. Lee Yoon-mu couldn't understand why the two sword spirits were so anxious. Yet when the two sword spirits were about to completely finish off the black Kylin, a black barrier appeared in front of them and barred their path. Ha 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 ha, this senior will curse you to be killed by your own flesh and blood and die without any proper burial. Ha 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 ha, furthermore, this senior will put this saint darkness pill into your body, forcing you to remain forever trapped in your evil thoughts. Henceforth, all friends will desert you, isolating you for eternity. After the black Kylin finished speaking, his body dissipated and then transformed into a black golden pill which abruptly entered Lee Yoon-mu's mouth. Oh! What did it make me eat? Regardless of how much Lee Yoon-mu asked, the black Kylin had already disappeared without any trace. The two sword spirits sighed. Everything is our fault. We didn't properly protect you. We gave it the chance to use the spirit word Gatha. I'm afraid that everything he said just now will come true. Come true? Haha, the black Kylin was just food for me. How can I believe his words so casually? The system spoke up then as well. Although you have been affected by the spirit word Gatha, I had raised my guard long ago, so you don't need to be anxious. I couldn't remove the saint darkness pill from your body, however, so this matter of being trapped in evil thoughts will truly come true. Lee Yoon-mu coughed and said, the black Kylin is already dead, so the seal of ancient lands should have opened. Just as he began to speak, the two sword spirits looked over at the tunnel entrance that was not too far away from them. The lava hell suddenly began to shake, and their surroundings underwent an enormous change. The central region where they were standing rose up higher and higher. Soon after that, they saw a door with a mechanism. Lee Yoon-mu arrived in front of it with the help of the two sword spirits. He lightly touched a lever nearby, and the mechanism opened. Lee Yoon-mu was quite curious about what was sealed behind the seal of the ancient lands. The system was silent for a while before saying, finally, you can see the seal in front of you. Remove it, and I will activate a new function. Lee Yoon-mu looked at the red spell formation and slowly asked, what is actually sealed here? Chapter 762, Sealed Box. The system was silent for a moment before saying, that's right, this is the fire seal of the ancient lands. But opening this seal isn't as simple as you think. Lee Yoon-mu was slightly startled. He had already defeated the black Kylin, so why was the system saying that it wasn't simple? The divine beast protecting the seal had already been killed. After Lee Yoon-mu heard system's words, he began to search for some method to open the spell formation in the cave without any better alternative. On the wall, there was a mural which seemed to be deeply related to the creation of the Eastern Domain. The person in this mural is the master god of the ancient lands, Pangu, the system calmly explained. Lee Yoon-mu nodded. Even after opening the seal, the master god hasn't awakened completely? Didn't you say that the true god has to return for the master gods to awaken thoroughly? The system turned silent for a moment before saying, that's right, only when the true god has returned will the master gods awaken. Otherwise, even if you open the 5 seals, the master gods won't awaken. Lee Yoon-mu pondered over it. If nothing would happen, what was the true aim of Fuxi and Nuwa to make him open the seal? It was clearly not to awaken their master god, so why did they put forth that condition? At that juncture, the system finally explained the truth of the situation to him. Perhaps they thought that you would die at the hands of the black Kylin? It didn't lose even to the joint attack of 2 ancient gods, so they should have been certain that you wouldn't be able to survive the encounter. I knew they didn't have good intentions, Lee Yoon-mu said coldly. Those 2 exaggerated the facts, talking about the safety of all gods, and now? It turns out that they did everything for their own selfish desire. They are truly not suitable to be gods. There's no need to blame them. They only wanted to keep the devil-punishing sword in the primordial god world. When I created the devil-punishing and god-slaughtering swords, it was so that the gods and devils of the Eastern Domain would restrain each other. But I hadn't thought that the gods would develop so much quicker than the devils. The devils exist in the darkness, so they naturally cannot live under the same sky as the gods. Lee Yoon-mu didn't bother much about H.A.C.K and Nuwa planning against him. He wanted to wait until the seal was broken before confronting them. He searched the cave for half a day until he finally found a mechanism which could operate the spell formation. He quickly activated it and heard the sound of things moving in the surroundings. Right after that, a red light came out of the spell formation. Feeling pleasantly surprised, Lee Yoon-mu quickly asked, "Is it open now?" The system nodded its head. "Yes, the seal has been removed. Quickly collect the seal box." Lee Yoon-mu looked at the center of the spell formation, and sure enough, there was an exquisitely refined box at the center. It was quite similar to the box containing the secret genetic code. "It is a seal I left in the ancient lands, and it contains some data for me. Don't open it right now. Wait until the other 4 seals have been opened and you have gathered all 5 boxes. When they are opened simultaneously, I will be awakened." True God would awaken like that? Lee Yoon-mu was slightly startled upon hearing that. It seemed like the system inside his body was truly the creator of the entire origin world and all living beings. It was the master of the world. Lee Yoon-mu nodded. "Then the reason you chose me as your host was to achieve this." The system didn't say anything, and Lee Yoon-mu reached for the box. The moment he touched it, however, the cave suddenly began to crumble. "Quickly leave this place." The warning drove Lee Yoon-mu to action, and he immediately escaped from the cave. If he had been slower by even an instant, they might have had to hold their funeral there. After getting through the daunting experience without any mishap, the system suddenly said with sincerity, "Thank you." Until then, the system had given the impression of being proud and aloof to Lee Yoon-mu, so when it suddenly expressed its gratitude, he didn't know how to react for a moment. "Your gratitude was quite sudden. We can be considered to be on the same boat. If not for you, perhaps I wouldn't have even known about the matter of the fusion of the parallel planes and wouldn't have come to the origin world. Let's go. Let's leave the primordial god world and go for the other seals," the system said calmly. In the primordial god world, Ling Yuran was captured by people dispatched by H.A.C.K and Nuwa while Yoon-mu had been restrained by them. "What the hell are you doing?" she shouted hysterically. She couldn't believe that H.A.C.K and Nuwa would surprisingly detain them. "This is your punishment for your ties with that demonic monster Lee Yoon-mu," Nuwa said coldly. Stunned, Yoon-mu asked with suspicion, You deliberately asked Lee Yoon-mu to stay here? What was your aim behind sending him to the lava hell?" H.A.C.K calmly looked at her. Even battle god Xingtian and Flame Emperor Sheneng were unable to defeat the divine beast protecting the seal, so I don't believe that youngster could survive there. After all, he is just a mortal. From the moment he fell to the devil path, his fate was sealed. You too. Yoon-mu fell into despair when she looked at H.A.C.K and Nuwa's stern face. She knew that she had harmed Lee Yoon-mu. If they had left the primordial world long ago, like Lee Yoon-mu had wanted, H.A.C.K and Nuwa would not have gotten the opportunity to hurt them. But there was no medicine for regret. They were in the primordial god world, so they had to listen to H.A.C.K and Nuwa, otherwise, they couldn't even think of leaving. Ling Yuran struggled while shouting, "You two bastards, release us! Release us!" Ling Yuran didn't know H.A.C.K and Nuwa, so she was unaware whether they were ancient gods or not. In her eyes, as long as anyone harmed her and Yoon-mu, they were bastards. "Bio, aren't you a little too naive?" H.A.C.K said coldly. "Did you really think that just because this devil spirit helped Lee Yoon-mu remove the devil energy in his body, we wouldn't be able to sense that he was still a devil?" His words startled Yoon-mu. The two ancient gods seemed to have discovered something wrong with Lee Yoon-mu long ago and had deceived them to send him into the lava hell. It turned out that H.A.C.K and Nuwa's aim was to use someone else to do their dirty work. "I hate you! I hate you!" Yoon-mu struggled as hard as she could. She really didn't want to see Lee Yoon-mu encountering any mishap. But by then, Fuxi and Nuwa had already done everything without giving her any choice. She could only pray that nothing happened to Lee Yoon-mu, or she wouldn't be able to live with herself for the rest of her life. Chapter 763, Getting Someone Else to Do the Dirty Work. Fuxi looked at the devil spirit and coldly said, that devil Lee Yoon-mu should have already died in the lava hell, and this devil spirit also cannot survive. Since you are a devil, you must disappear from this world for all eternity. Fuxi and Nuwa didn't have the slightest tolerance for devils. When Yoon-mu saw Fuxi attack Ling Yuran, she anxiously shouted, "Stay your hand! I beg you to stop! She is my younger sister! Stop it, stop you too! If you want to kill someone, then kill me! But you cannot harm her!" Yoon-mu's throat had already went hoarse from shouting, while Ling Yuran was still looking at Fuxi and Nuwa in bewilderment. She didn't know what they planned to do with her, but she was well aware that her identity had been exposed. "What the hell do you want to do?" Looking at the devil spirit's naive appearance, Fuxi sighed and condensed the thunder in his hand. As long as it hit Ling Yuran, she would instantly disappear in a puff of smoke. Yoon-mu saw that Fuxi was about to attack Ling Yuran and began to struggle even more madly. "You cannot! Don't attack my sister!" Somehow, she managed to break free from her bindings and rushed to stand in front of Ling Yuran to protect her. At the sight of that, Fuxi's complexion instantly changed. "Yoon-mu, do you know what crime you are committing? You want to continue down the wrong path? You are a god, and she is a devil. You both cannot exist under the same sky." Yoon-mu knelt in front of Nuwa and pulled at her clothes. "Empress Nuwa, you have taught me from childhood that I must act for good. Yuran, she has never harmed any god and is just a child. It was not her decision to be born a devil spirit. And she hasn't even committed any crimes, so why must you insist on killing her?" When Nuwa heard Yoon-mu's words, her determination wavered slightly. But she was Nuwa, the ruler of the primordial god world, and couldn't discriminate among her subjects or let a devil go. It would be tantamount to harming the gods of her country, after all. "Yoon-mu, don't bar me from killing this devil again," Fuxi said coldly. "We haven't punished you for your crimes in lieu of your contributions to the primordial god world, but now, you are trying to stop me and Nuwa from eliminating this devil. What are you even thinking about? Nuwa, why are you hesitating? She is under my control, and I will completely destroy her." Fuxi had given a command, so Nuwa could only follow his order. She quickly restrained Yoon-mu so that she couldn't protect Ling Yuran and pulled the young woman behind her while silently watching Ling Yuran, who still had a naive expression on her face. Yoon-mu's eyes filled with tears. She cried like a crazy woman, but it was as if no one could feel her distress and pain. Nuwa's gaze was filled with coldness. Although the devil spirit might not have done any crimes, they didn't have the slightest bit of mercy for her. Many years had gone by, but the attitude of the primordial god world toward the devils had never changed. Fuxi found the devil spirit quite adorable, but he couldn't do anything differently. He had no other choice than to eliminate her to maintain the justice in his world. A cyan bolt condensed in Fuxi's hand, and he threw it at Ling Yuran. When it hit her, she would die without any corpse, and her soul would be completely erased from the world. "Stop it!" Yoon-mu hoarsely yelled. At that moment of imminent peril, the god-slaughtering sword appeared in front of the bolt and easily stopped Fuxi's attack. After protecting Ling Yuran, Lee Yoon-mu coldly smiled at Fuxi and Nuwa. "You two fooled me well." Lee Yoon-mu's gaze was full of fury. At that moment, he could no longer control his emotions. Since they had abandoned their facade of politeness and even wanted to kill Ling Yuran, he would never forgive them. When Ling Yuran saw Lee Yoon-mu, she shouted from her heart, "Li Ying, you came. Quickly put these two bastards to death, they are bullying me." "Li Ying! Fuxi and Nuwa looked at Li Yunmu in astonishment. Was it possible that Li Ying had devoured Li Yunmu? But whether he was Li Ying or Li Yunmu, both of them weren't an easy opponent for them. Yuan Biao began to cry tears of joy upon seeing Li Yunmu alive. As long as he was with them, they had the hope of surviving after Fuxi and Nuwa's hypocrisy had been completely exposed. Nuwa looked at Li Yunmu in astonishment. You? How did you survive the lava hell? How is that possible? That ancient divine beast, even two battle god Xingtians couldn't defeat it, but you surprisingly could. Nuwa didn't dare to believe it, and Fuxi fixed his eyes on Li Yunmu. What sort of demonic ability did he have that Yuan Biao was willing to follow him to death? Are you too disappointed that I didn't die in the lava hell? Li Yunmu's cold smile grew brighter. Today, I will make a declaration. Beginning from today, there is no relation between me and the primordial god world. We cannot live under the same sky. Nuwa, didn't you say that no one can destroy the enchantment of the primordial god world? I will destroy it now. Li Yunmu didn't seem to be joking, but Fuxi and Nuwa kept looking at him, trying to discern whether he really meant it. He wanted to destroy the primordial god world by himself? What sort of joke was that? But he had defeated the ancient divine beast Black Kylin. They were extremely astonished by seeing that Li Yunmu's strength had increased by leaps and bounds once again. Two cyan bolts appeared in Fuxi's hand, and he furiously said, Li Yunmu, since you want to become an enemy of the primordial god world, I won't show any mercy toward you. Then why don't you go ahead and attack? Li Yunmu said ruthlessly. The two cyan bolts in Fuxi's hands suddenly rushed toward Li Yunmu without any warning. Even if he wanted to evade, he would find it somewhat difficult. But he had the two swords right then, and he had also comprehended the harmonious sword's skill. He wasn't afraid of Fuxi and Nuwa joining hands and coldly sneered at them. You can attack together. I'm not afraid of you. What sort of self-confidence was that? Upon hearing his words, Yuan Biao couldn't help but cry in joy. If Li Yunmu hadn't arrived on time, Ling Yuran would have been completely erased from existence. Chapter 764, Destroying the Primordial God World. Li Yunmu quickly placed the Devil Spirit and Divine Spirit within their respective ancient secret methods so as to avoid Fuxi and Nuwa using Yuan Biao and Ling Yuran to threaten him. As long as he could guarantee that they could not put any conditions on him, he could easily deal with the two ancient gods. He instantly struck them with the god-slaughtering sword, and the two ancient gods found it increasingly more strenuous to deal with his attacks. He was someone who had defeated the Black Kylin, so even if they joined together, they might not be his opponent. Li Yunmu chopped down ruthlessly, showing his hatred and resent for Fuxi and Nuwa. If they had given shelter to him at that time, he wouldn't have had to enter the devil world. The two ancient gods had forced him to become like that so they couldn't blame him. The god-slaughtering sword possessed boundless strength, and cold sweat dropped from the foreheads of Fuxi and Nuwa. They found it increasingly more laborious to continue fighting. If the fight continued, they probably wouldn't be able to subdue Li Yunmu. At that moment, they began to feel that they shouldn't have offended Li Yunmu, who possessed endless potential. They had even used someone else's knife to kill him, but it had also proved useless. Instead, Li Yunmu's hatred for them deepened even more because of that. Fuxi and Nuwa looked at each other, and the same thought crossed their minds: the enchantment installed in the primordial god world. If they could trap Li Yunmu there, their mission would be considered successful. After that, they would only need to wait until Xingtian recovered from his heavy injuries and could put Li Yunmu in his place. Li Yunmu suddenly felt his legs get restricted. A golden spell formation had appeared underneath his feet, trapping him. He then commanded the god-slaughtering sword with his thoughts. He had obtained the sword just recently, but he could already use it to almost perfection. The god-slaughtering sword, thus, fought with Fuxi and Nuwa outside the spell formation. This spell formation seems to be ancient. It will require some time for you to escape from it. The system, which had been silent until then, suddenly said. Then help me break the restrictions of this spell formation while I use harmonious sword skill to stall the two of them, Lee Yoon-mu said calmly. The system didn't say anything more. Although the spell formation had trapped Lee Yoon-mu's body, it couldn't trap his heart. And he still wanted to defeat H.A.C.K and Nuwa. It was not only for Ling Yuran, but also for himself. He wanted to let H.A.C.K and Nuwa know that there wasn't anything completely good or absolutely evil in the world. If they couldn't even let a devil spirit go, then the primordial god world's existence wasn't necessary. The devil punishing sword behind Lee Yoon-mu suddenly rushed out under Lee Yoon-mu's commands. The swords seemed to come to an agreement in mid-air and rotated around each other. When H.A.C.K and Nuwa saw the devil punishing sword and god slaughtering sword trying to harmonize, their spirits were completely crushed. This is harmonious swords! Lee Yoon-mu shouted loudly, and with his words, the two swords began to spin faster in mid-air until they turned into a ray of golden light. It seemed to have an outline of a sword. Harmonious swords allowed the swords to fuse and transform into an enormous sword. Lee Yoon-mu was commanding it with his thoughts, but H.A.C.K and Nuwa, who were standing not far away, were full of astonishment. They had never expected that the devil punishing sword could combine with god slaughtering sword after recognizing a master. Impossible! H.A.C.K could not believe it. How could god and devil energies combine together? It violated the basic principles of the world. But the scene in front of his eyes continued to unfold. The golden light, which was like an enormous sword, suddenly struck H.A.C.K and Nuwa, instantly forcing them to retreat. Both of the ancient gods spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time while looking at the golden light with endless astonishment. If they let that enormous sword continue with its destruction, the entire primordial god world would soon be destroyed by Lee Yoon-mu. H.A.C.K and Nuwa could not stand it. You have defeated us, H.A.C.K suddenly said. However, you cannot leave the primordial god world since I have already sealed it. Without our permission, you cannot open it. Lee Yoon-mu looked at them calmly, as if not concerned about his threat in the least. Didn't I say that I will destroy the entire primordial god world? If primordial god world is not around, then your so-called enchantment is no more than an empty world. His words left H.A.C.K and Nuwa dumbstruck. They had believed that Lee Yoon-mu was only talking drivel when he mentioned destroying the primordial god world. But right then, it seemed that he wasn't joking. Everything he said had been true. The enormous sword formed by the fusion of the two swords was strong enough to destroy the entire primordial god world. The enormous golden sword's silhouette rampaged through the primordial god world, which left H.A.C.K and Nuwa in awe. But they still had one trick up their sleeves, which was the spell formation under Lee Yoon-mu's feet. It had the power to restrain his strength in the primordial god world. After he lost his strength, H.A.C.K and Nuwa believed that it would be impossible for him to destroy the primordial god world. Your strength has been restrained, and your body has been trapped. You are just dreaming if you want to destroy the primordial god world. Nuwa said bluntly with blood trickling down the corners of her mouth. Lee Yoon-mu's lips curled upwards. You think that you can trap me by relying on this spell formation? Don't you underestimate me a bit too much? Before Lee Yoon-mu's words even fell to the ground, H.A.C.K and Nuwa were shocked to see him walk out of the spell formation. Moreover, it also didn't seem as if his body had been fettered by anything. H.A.C.K howled in shock. Impossible! I clearly. Suddenly, the presence of devil energy appeared around Lee Yoon-mu's body, and the system started shouting in warning, "Wake up! Don't lose your reason, you cannot lose your reason." Hey! However, regardless of the system's efforts, Lee Yoon-mu had already lost his consciousness. Nuwa and H.A.C.K were must-kill targets in his eyes. He had to eradicate them not only for Ling Yuran, but also for himself. A different type of energy coiled around his body, and his smile became increasingly more devilish. The dark saint pill in his body was constantly corrupting his meridians. If the corruption was allowed to continue, then not only would Lee Yoon-mu be completely swallowed, no ordinary person would be able to approach him, just as the Black Kylin had said. Chapter 765, Forming Demonic Energy. Fuxi and Nuwa's eyes filled with endless astonishment. How could they not know what that black light represented? It was surprisingly vile energy. Vile energy kept spreading out while Li Yunmu's strength was increasing. If it continued, then destroying the primordial god world would become as easy as turning a hand for him. How much vile energy does he have in his body? Vile energy was somewhat different from devil energy. It was also not the same as demonic energy or fiend energy. They were all slightly different from one another. Demonic energy represented evil, vile energy represented killing intent, devil energy represented a sort of spirit energy, while fiend energy was the symbol of calamity. 3 types of dark energy had gathered in Li Yunmu's body all of a sudden, and they constantly fought within him. Even if they were suppressed, he still couldn't control them, which resulted in his energy growing chaotic and finally taking the form of demonic energy. Demonic energy was the most terrifying one because it represented the combination of the 3 types of energy. If even one of them existed in an ordinary person's body, it would already be considered as terrifying. But in Li Yunmu's body, 3 types of energies were gathered together, causing the formation of the 4th type of energy. After seeing that, how could Fuxi and Nuwa not be astonished? Li Yunmu had absorbed a great amount of fiend energy previously because of the influence of fiend origin. Although fiend origin was suppressed by the system, fiend energy still remained in Li Yunmu's body. As for devil energy, when he went into the devil god well and fell to the devil path, then entered the devil world and absorbed its world tree's power, he had been corroded by it. Although Ling Yuran had removed the devil energy from his body temporarily, she was unable to completely eradicate it. Vile energy entered him when he defeated the Black Kylin. It had sent a dark saint pill into his body, which turned Li Yunmu extremely vile. The 3 types of energies converged and formed the terrifying demonic energy. Ha ha! Suddenly, a strange smile appeared on Li Yunmu's lips and Fuxi and Nuwa's complexion turned deathly pale. They hadn't expected that they would be defeated by him in the end. Li Yunmu looked at Fuxi and Nuwa and said, "Henceforth, the primordial god world will vanish from the ancient lands, and you two will go to hell together. Since you have decided that my existence is an absolute evil, I will send you off as this so-called absolute evil." Before his words could even fade away, Li Yunmu shook fiercely, and the demonic energy suddenly entered the golden silhouette of the enormous sword. It swiftly grew larger, and the entire primordial god world was suddenly covered in darkness. After Li Yunmu fused the devil-punishing and god-slaughtering swords, he bombarded the entire primordial god world with the power of the enormous sword. Soon, the primordial god world was tottering on the verge of collapse as if the heavens had fallen and earth rendered. Li Yunmu grabbed the enormous black and golden sword, and an enormous explosion shook the entire primordial god world. The ground cracked as if it had experienced a heavenly calamity, and everything crumbled soon after. When the heavens and earth collapsed, Fuxi and Nuwa were buried in the primordial god world. Until their final moments, they didn't believe that it would really be their end. Fire god and river god, who were in the ancient lands, were stupefied by the sound of an explosion of the primordial god world collapsing. The primordial god world, on which the gods relied for survival, had been destroyed? Who could have done it? Were it the devils? River god and fire god rushed to the opening of the primordial god world only to discover that Fuxi and Nuwa's presence had thoroughly vanished from the ruins of the collapsed primordial god world. Who was it? Emperor Fuxi, Empress Nuwa. The 2 gods shouted again and again, but Fuxi and Nuwa had been buried in the ruins. Instead of them, from the smoke-filled region, an unfamiliar silhouette gradually appeared in front of fire god and river god, which made them frown. Soon though, they recognized the face in front of them. It belonged to the criminal. Mortal, what exactly happened in the primordial god world? Did Fuxi and Nuwa have to face the invasion of the devils? Li Yoon-mu was about to say something else when he heard their words and suddenly turned around to look at the ruins. His lips curled upwards upon seeing the wreckage. Yes. The devils invaded. Fire god and river god's gazes instantly became solemn. Then what about Fuxi and Nuwa? Dead. Fire god Zurong and river god Gonggong were stunned. They couldn't help but shake their heads in disbelief. How can Fuxi and Nuwa be dead? We gods cannot die, mortal. Li Yoon-mu smiled. I killed them myself. Li Yoon-mu's words caused Zurong and Gonggong's expressions to change instantly. What was the mortal saying? He killed Fuxi and Nuwa? How was that possible? They didn't believe him at all. How could he kill a god? Two swords were flying behind Li Yoon-mu. With a su sound, they stabbed fire god and river god. A sinister smile appeared on Li Yoon-mu's lips. Your ancient land seal has been destroyed, and the battle between gods and devils has been finished. Your constant patrol of the ancient lands has become meaningless, so it would be better if you went to hell like Fuxi and Nuwa. Li Yoon-mu's gaze was gloomy and cold. Surrounded by vile energy and filled with demonic presence, he slowly walked out of the primordial god world. Once outside, he took out Yuan-Bio and Ling Yuran from the ancient secret methods. When they saw the world in front of their eyes filled with astonishment. Yuan-Bio especially didn't dare to believe what she was seeing. Li Yoon-mu had surprisingly destroyed the entire primordial god world on his own? How did he do it? Fuxi and Nuwa were unpardonable criminals whose crimes couldn't be erased in Yuan-Bio's eyes, so she did not worry about them anymore. They had been trying to eliminate the devils completely, not even willing to spare a devil spirit who had awakened just recently. Previously, because of Fuxi and Nuwa's kindness toward her, she had been obedient, but when they revealed their true faces, she didn't feel guilty anymore. Li Yoon-mu suddenly revealed a demonic smile. Unable to bear to look at Yuan-Bio and Ling Yuran, he walked forward through the ancient lands. We should try to find that priest spirit void now and see what his plans are? Li Yoon-mu, don't walk so fast, wait for us. Yuan-Bio said. Li Ying, many thanks for saving me. Li Yoon-mu coldly turned around and said to Ling Yuran, don't bother to act cute in front of me. I am not Li Ying. My name is Li Yoon-mu. I killed the Li Ying you speak of, stupid girl. Chapter 766, The Truth. Ling Yuran's whole body shook. What did she just hear? He wasn't Li Ying? Could the battle with Fuxi and Nuwa caused him to go crazy? Ling Yuran quickly placed her tender hand on Li Yoon-mu's forehead and asked, Li Ying, what happened? Did you fall ill and started talking nonsense? Yuan-Bio was silent for a moment. After seeing Li Yoon-mu's actions and hearing his words, she understood that the person in front of her was different from the Li Yoon-mu she knew. But since he had already spoken, she didn't intend to hide the truth from Ling Yuran anymore. Otherwise, it would be really unfair to the girl. What he said is true. He isn't Li Ying, but the one who killed him. Yuan-Bio's words caused Ling Yuran's beautiful eyes to go wide. She didn't dare to believe that the man she had married had hidden such a cruel truth from her. Couldn't he continue deceiving her? That way, she could have remained happy in her ignorance. Li Yoon-mu turned his cold eyes on Yuan-Bio then. You are the same. Fuxi and Nuwa, who had taken care of you, were killed by me. The primordial god world has also been destroyed. You should understand now that I am a bastard. Yuan-Bio was startled, but she didn't say anything. His aura was similar to when he had fallen to the devil path, but there was clearly no devil energy in his body, so why did he still lose his reason and personality? Yuan-Bio gently caressed Li Yoon-mu's cheek. Since we got married, wherever you go, I will follow. It doesn't matter what appearance you change into, I will always stay by your side. Ling Yuran was somewhat flustered, and she recoiled a few steps before saying in an incredulous tone, You two are liars. Yuan Biao took a deep breath and said, Ling Yuran, we didn't want to lie to you, but you had only come into the world just recently and we didn't want to hurt you. Just when Ling Yuran thought to leave, Li Yunmu coldly said, you want to run? How will you escape? You are a spirit of the ancient secret method, which is in my hands. Where will you run? Li Yunmu's words stole any hope Ling Yuran might have held onto. The man before her eyes wasn't the Li Ying she knew, so who exactly was he? Why did he kill Li Ying? What was his aim? All right, I can stay by your side, but I will tell you now that I will definitely avenge Li Ying. The moment I get the chance, I will kill you. Do you still want me to stay with you? Li Yunmu suddenly pinched Ling Yuran's cheek, and she struggled to get away from him while rigidly staring at him. I will tell you, I hate it most when others threaten me. If you threaten me again, I will completely annihilate you. Li Yunmu's tone was completely earnest, but Ling Yuran stared back at him without wavering, unwilling to yield. Her disposition was quite fierce. Yuan Biao quickly rushed to Li Yunmu while yelling, stay your hand for me. Li Yunmu, what exactly are you doing? What happened to you in the primordial god world? Why did you become like this? Li Yunmu coldly smiled at her. It is just as you see it. I don't want to explain more. Ling Yuran noticed that different types of energies constantly mixed in Li Yunmu's body, creating a new type of energy. Since she was the devil spirit of the ancient secret method, it wasn't strange that she was able to discover the energy circulating in other people's body. After Li Yunmu relaxed his hand, Ling Yuran coughed a few times and gasped for breath. Then, she said to Yuan Biao, elder sister, he has been contaminated by demonic energy. Demonic energy. Yuan Biao had heard about the devil energy and fiend energy, but she had never heard of demonic energy. This made her even more concerned for Li Yunmu. Demonic energy is formed from the convergence of the other dark energies in his body. I took a look a moment ago, and there were 3 types of energies colliding in his body. I can help him by removing the demonic energy, but tell me, was what he said true or not? Is Li Ying really dead? Yuan Biao was silent for a moment, then she decided to tell the complete truth to Ling Yuran. I am sorry, Ling Yuran, for lying to you for so long. Li Ying is dead. And Li Yunmu isn't Li Ying. This is the truth, but he was forced to kill Li Ying for me. You don't know what sort of crimes Li Ying committed in the devil world in the past years. I heard from Li Yunmu that you were trapped in the world tree, and the reason for that was because Li Ying wanted you as a source of endless energy for the devil world. He would have never become your husband. Li Ying had extremely horrible temperament, and he wasn't interested in anything besides power. He only wanted to use you as a source of energy. You should think carefully about it. Why would an ancient secret method be trapped in a world tree? If you were in the primordial god world, H.A.C.K and Nuwa would have definitely not done that to you. They believed in righteousness, and although they didn't have any tolerance for devils, when compared between to Li Ying, they were better. If you had continued to stay with Li Ying, then someday, he almost certainly would have killed you. Yuan Biao's words stabbed Ling Yuran, and she felt a chill run down her spine. The psychological blow of those words was really strong. She felt as if she had been splashed by a bucket of cold water. The Li Ying she had loved for so long was surprisingly a complete scoundrel in the eyes of her elder sister. Yuan Biao continued to speak. You have already married Li Yunmu, and he is a good person. He will take care of you for your whole life. Although he has been contaminated by demonic energy, he will definitely treat you properly once he returns to his normal self. He was willing to use the ancient secret method to rescue commoners, which is far better than using it to obtain power. Yuan Biao's words left Ling Yuran silent. Her elder sister's tone was completely earnest, and she had no reason to lie about it. Not to mention that they were both ancient secret methods, so they shared similar destiny. The only difference between them was that her elder sister had fallen in love with a good man while she came to love a scum. Yuan gently caressed Ling Yuran's beautiful hair and said, "That's why you must help Li Yoon-mu. You must help him get rid of the demonic energy so that he can recover his reason. Consider it as doing a favor for your elder sister. The primordial god world has already been destroyed, and I don't have anywhere to go. Apart from following Li Yoon-mu, I can't do anything else." Ling Yuran took a deep breath after hearing Yuan Baiao's words, and her gaze fell on Li Yoon-mu once more. Chapter 767, Suppressing Demonic Energy. How to get married without meeting a scum. Ling Yuran was glad that her elder sister had married a kind and honest person like Li Yoon-mu instead of a despicable scum like Li Ying. She gradually released a breath of turbid air while looking in Li Yoon-mu's eyes and quickly helped him suppress the demonic energy in his body. As the ancient secret method, she had the ability to suppress the energy inside a person's body. Upon realizing that Li Yoon-mu's body was being tormented by the collision of the three types of energies, she first suppressed the devil energy, but the fiend energy and vile energy were constantly surging in his body. They pulled the suppressed devil energy after them to circulate through his body. The three types of energies gave a headache to Ling Yuran. They were an extremely thorny problem, but she was still willing to do it for Yuan Baiao. Sweat poured down her forehead while she assisted Li Yoon-mu in suppressing the three types of energies. She was going completely all out. Yuan Baiao was extremely nervous on the side. She really didn't want to see some mishap happen to Li Yoon-mu. Ling Yuran used up all her spirit energy in Li Yoon-mu's body. When she balanced the three types of energy within him, she collapsed on the floor. Yuan Baiao swiftly caught her and nervously asked, "Yuran, what happened to you?" Ling Yuran tiredly opened her eyes and shook her head, then said, I am all right, just need a little rest." "Quickly, go check, he recovered?" While closely embracing Ling Yuran, Yuan Baiao looked at Li Yoon-mu. At that moment, he slowly opened his eyes, and the blackness in them dissipated gradually. The energy surrounding his body also slowly disappeared. Li Yoon-mu surveyed his surroundings in bewilderment, then suddenly looked at Ling Yuran lying on the ground. What happened to Ling Yuran? What exactly happened here? Where are we? He asked nervously. Could it be that you have already forgotten about everything? Yuan Baiao asked coldly. Li Yoon-mu nodded. I don't remember what happened. I only remembered that Fuxi and Nuwa wanted to trap me. The only thought I had in my heart then was to leave the primordial god world. It's the last thing I recall. Yuan Baiao looked at the ruined primordial god world and calmly said, You destroyed the entire primordial god world. What? Li Yoon-mu turned around and saw that the primordial god world behind him had already turned into ruins. Fuxi and Nuwa were also killed by you. Li Yoon-mu's eyes went wide, and he shook his head. I didn't want to kill them. I am sorry, I truly don't remember what happened. I only felt a mysterious power surging through my body. Yuan Baiao nodded. Ling Yuran said that you have been contaminated by demonic energy and lost all reason. While in that state, you also revealed the truth to this girl, but she has suppressed the three types of energies in your body while disregarding her hatred. You are out of danger now. 3 types of energies. Li Yoon-mu was astonished. Who could have thought that so many types of energies were surprisingly stored in his body? When Li Yoon-mu recovered his reason, the system inside his body also awoke. It calmly said, Your body was under the control of the 3 types of energies. You can still lose your reason at any time, so you'll have to rely on Ling Yuran's ability to help you suppress them. You must keep this devil spirit by your side. Li Yoon-mu nodded. The system told him to do it, and he also felt some pity for Ling Yuran. But didn't she know the truth already? How could there not be any grudges and misunderstandings between them? Yuan Baiao looked at her former homeland, the primordial god world, and said while feeling broken-hearted, We'll go. Where? Li Yoon-mu asked suspiciously. Great Void Monastery of the Ancient Lands to find the priest spirit void to settle the bills. He certainly didn't have any pure goals when he tried to obtain the devil-punishing sword. It might be that he wants to continue slaughtering the devils, even willfully massacring innocents, just like H.A.C.K and Nuwa had done. Lee Yoon-mu nodded. If it were not for Yoon-baeo's suggestion to go to the primordial god world to apologize to H.A.C.K and Nuwa, perhaps they would have already settled the threat of priest spirit void. The entire origin world was in commotion after the news of the destruction of the primordial god world spread through the ancient lands. No one knew which devil of the devil world had become so ferocious that they were even able to kill H.A.C.K and Nuwa. The ancient land's countless commoners were discussing it when someone else commented that the devil world had also been destroyed. Its world tree had collapsed after losing the support of the ancient secret method. After that event, many devils had come to the ancient lands to live their lives in anonymity. Both the primordial god world and the devil world had been destroyed, so the only thing that remained was the human world. At that time, Zhongling City was unusually lively. Although the devils and gods were thrown into chaos, they were still living their lives free and unfettered. After the two worlds were destroyed, the human world obtained most benefits. Many cultivators still thirsted to reach the peak of strength. In Zhongling City, there was a famous Great Void monastery with countless old Taoists who had beheaded devils and struck down monsters. One of them was precisely priest spirit void whom Ming Hui had mentioned. Since Ling Yuran had exhausted her spirit energy, Li Yunmu returned her to the ancient secret method. He went to the Great Void Monastery followed by Yoon-baeo. When the disciples of the Great Void Monastery saw that Li Yunmu and Yoon-baeo wanted to meet Priest Spirit Void, they didn't stop them. It did not seem like they knew about the improper dealings of Priest Spirit Void. When they met Priest Spirit Void, Yoon-baeo quickly interrogated him. Why did you want to obtain the devil-punishing sword? What is your aim? Ming Hui has already talked, so you shouldn't bother to lie. Priest Spirit Void slowly turned around and smiled. Two guests have come, but this lowly monk doesn't understand what they speak and hopes that they can explain it. You despicable fellow, did you want the devil-punishing sword to continue the willful slaughter of innocents? Since you have eaten the internal den of devils and monsters, you will suffer the wrath of heaven. This lowly monk has beheaded countless devils and monsters and killed many demons. Obtaining a little bit of cultivation is only a little fortune after the suffering. You seem to have dropped in to interrogate me, but I wonder what are your intentions? Li Yunmu didn't want to explain himself and calmly said, the devil-punishing sword you wanted is with me. The devil-punishing sword was instantly unsheathed in front of Priest Spirit Void. His eyes filled with astonishment. He naturally knew the meaning behind the appearance of the devil-punishing sword. The god and devil worlds had encountered a great calamity. Chapter 768, Priest Spirit Void. However, that great calamity was surprisingly that god and devil worlds would completely disappear from existence. Upon realizing that, how could Priest Spirit Void not sigh? I hadn't expected that the person who brought the calamity to the god and devil worlds was unexpectedly you. It was a prophecy in the primordial god world, that once the devil punishment sword appeared and recognized a master, the god and devil worlds would face a calamity. Now that the prophecy was finally fulfilled, this lowly one wants to obtain the devil punishment sword only to avoid it causing a calamity in the human world. But you have engaged in the willful slaughter of innocents, injured many devils, and also ate their internal den. You are really despicable. Today, we have come in place of heaven's will. Ha 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 ha, little girl, I killed countless devils, which is the true will of heaven. If for those cold-blooded devils you choose to become my enemy, that will be the true wrong way. Little girl, the one who will encounter heaven's wrath is you and not me. Yoon-baeo gnashed her teeth. Let's not talk nonsense with this priest and just attack. She resentfully looked at Priest Spirit Void with her heart filled with boundless hatred toward him. Li Yunmu, however, couldn't really understand her bitter hatred. Priest Spirit Void suddenly smiled and said, little girl, since you feel that this lowly me killing the devils and beheading the monsters does wrong, it means that you are harboring devils and associating with them. Today, I will take the place of heaven's will. Heaven flipping seal appear, today is the day of your death. The instant heaven flipping seal appeared, priest spirit void's complexion changed. Lee Yoon-mu was surprisingly a devil. Moreover, vile energies were flowing inside his body, which made him truly terrifying. You are a demonic devil. Priest spirit void glared at Lee Yoon-mu. But how could a demonic devil control the devil-punishing sword? Priest spirit void was unable to understand how could it be, but that wasn't important. Priest spirit void saw himself as good and Lee Yoon-mu as evil, so he coldly said, "Since you are evil, I won't be lenient toward you. Today is the day of your death." When Lee Yoon-mu saw that priest spirit void wanted to kill him, he decided to fight against him in self-defense. Flipping heaven seal. A weapon similar to a ruler emitting a purple-colored light suddenly appeared with dazzling brightness. A moment after that, they all entered a different space. Lee Yoon-mu and Yoon-bio tumbled to the ground together. Upon seeing the spirit energy flowing in the surroundings, they were astonished. What was it? Lee Yoon-mu clearly saw two types of spirit energy colliding and creating minute cracks in the space. Where exactly were they? Yoon-bio kneaded the skin where it was aching and gloomily said. We have entered that weapon used by priest spirit void, so what should we do now? It'll be difficult to go out. The space in front of them had enchantments installed all around, and there was an enormous sphere at the center. It was like the core of the weapon. What exactly do we need to do to get out? Ha 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 ha, the people trapped in the heaven flipping seal can never come out. You two should properly enjoy the scenery here. Priest spirit void, you come out here. Don't be someone who hides in front of reality. This senior is more grand than priest spirit void. I am the spirit of heaven flipping seal and spirit void is under my control. Heaven flipping seal surprisingly had such a formidable ability. Moreover, a soul existed inside it. No wonder so many spirit energies were colliding with each other inside the surrounding enchantment until they even formed small cracks. It was all because heaven flipping seals and priest spirit void's spirit energies were colliding inside the space. The core was dazzling, and Lee Yoon-mu nudged Yoon-bio before squatting down on the ground and shouting loudly, "Be careful." Yoon-bio was completely shocked by Lee Yoon-mu's shout, but both of them simultaneously fell on the ground. If it were not for Lee Yoon-mu reacting quickly, the two of them would have been struck. At that time, they would have really encountered a great calamity. Yoon-bio had a feeling of lingering fear. The catastrophe had come without warning and brushed right past her. Lee Yoon-mu couldn't understand what kind of ghost was the internal core. Why were all sorts of globes being spat out at them? The flame pearl crazily launched attacks on Lee Yoon-mu and Yoon-bio while all sorts of spell formations began to appear on the surrounding enchantments. Yoon-bio looked at the 5 spell formations and said to Lee Yoon-mu, "This weapon is formed from the 5 attributes subduing each other. The flame flying out of internal core right now is from fire, which is one of the 5 attributes. If we want to stop its attacks, we have to find a water spell formation of the 5 attributes." After learning about such a rule of the spell formation, Lee Yoon-mu nodded. He used half his attention to help Yoon-bio constantly dodge the flames, while the other half to look for the spell formation which she mentioned. When they found it, Lee Yoon-mu felt as if his body could no longer budge. What was going on there? His body was attracted by the spell formation, and it was forcefully dragged toward the spell formation. After he landed inside it, the red flame balls were unable to injure him as well as Yoon-bio. After realizing that, Lee Yoon-mu began to observe what was the attribute of the flame balls shooting out of the internal core. They soon found another attribute spell formation, and the internal core became explosive. The entire space seemed about to collapse, and with a loud boom, the internal core disappeared. A spirit beast along with a person appeared in its place, at the center of the spell formation. The beast resembled a red-haired lion, and Lee Yoon-mu couldn't help but ask, what is this thing?" Yoon-bio looked calmly at it. Probably the spirit beast guarding the heaven flipping seal, or it may be its spirit. Ha ha ha, since you have come this far, it seems like you have some ability. But you've encountered this senior and this senior naturally won't let you go. Priest Spirit Void, you despicable fellow, let us go. Spirit Void? Ha 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 ha, this senior isn't that idiot Spirit Void. He is just this senior's pet. Lee Yoon-mu was startled, since the person before him was obviously Spirit Void. However, he was saying that he wasn't Spirit Void, so could it be that the two guys had exchanged souls? Yuan Biao also seemed to have thought that, and she covered her mouth. She then pointed at the red-haired lion and said, "Is it possible that the beats is Spirit Void?" The heaven-flipping seal's spirit was inside Priest Spirit Void's body, and it said while slowly caressing the spirit beast, "That's right, he is this senior's pet, so he naturally has the attitude of a pet." Chapter 769, Heaven-Flipping Seal. The spirit of Heaven-Flipping Seal smiled slightly. Since he asked this senior to deal with you, this can only be considered as this senior showing a little kindness toward him. Lee Yoon-mu sneered at him. Both of you are indeed birds of the same feather. Even your words are similar. This senior has killed many devils as Spirit Void, and you are a demonic devil, so this senior simply cannot let you go. Lee Yoon-mu subconsciously tried to move the devil-punishing sword, but what made him somewhat flabbergasted was that there was no reaction from the devil-punishing sword and God-slaughtering sword. What exactly was going on there? Yuan Biao shook her head. It's useless. This is the space inside Heaven-Flipping Seal, so we cannot use any weapons. We can only rely on ourselves to defeat them. Ha 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 ha, this girl has some experience. You are quite naive if you think you can take out your swords. Demonic devil. I have killed our countless devils, so even if I need to kill another little devil like you, it's not a huge matter for this senior. You really are savage. I want to see your crying face. The many energies inside Lee Yoon-mu's body were suppressed, but after having experienced them for so long, the power in his body had experienced a quantitative leap. Lee Yoon-mu had already broken through his original half-step god cultivation and officially become a god-level expert. Heaven-Flipping Seal is extraordinary, so we still need some strategy to defeat it. Yuan Biao said nervously. What strategy? I will be responsible for attracting the attention of the spirit beast while you go deal with the spirit of Heaven-Flipping Seal. You must quickly kill the spirit of Heaven-Splitting Seal since I can't take care of the beast for long. As soon as Yuan Biao finished talking, she suddenly attacked the spirit beast. It didn't have a human's brain, so when it saw Yuan Biao suddenly rush at it, it roared at her. When Lee Yoon-mu saw that Yuan Biao was using her body to guarantee that he could deal with the Heaven-Flipping Seal's spirit, he knew he couldn't disappoint her. He promptly circulated the power in his body. Although the demonic energy in his body had already been suppressed, he could still move his power. Energy constantly converged in his body before gathering on his fist, which he launched at the enemy. His punch didn't hit the body of Heaven-Flipping Seal's spirit, but the energy fluctuations it away. His power could crush mountains and rivers. The spirit of the Heaven-Flipping Seal was slightly startled since it simply hadn't sensed the change in Lee Yoon-mu. Since the energy inside his body was suppressed, his strength was also hidden. In the beginning, the spirit of Heaven-Flipping Seal thought that Lee Yoon-mu was only an ordinary mortal and didn't have any fear toward him. But when he attacked with such a terrifying punch, the spirit of Heaven-Flipping Seal suddenly realized that it had made a mistake and underestimated his strength. The power of that punch was definitely not at the level of a mortal. The spirit of Heaven-Flipping Seal looked at Lee Yoon-mu with some astonishment and indifferently said, "You, what exactly did you experience? You definitely aren't a simple and ordinary mortal who fell into the devil path. There's even the saint pill of a divine beast in your body. What exactly are you?" Heaven-Flipping Seal's spirit again noticed the change in Lee Yoon-mu's body, but it was already too late. It could not believe having discovered something, which should never be in an ordinary devil's body, and it was the saint pill. They were found in divine beasts' bodies, while devil beasts had internal cores. The third type, the spirit beasts, cultivated spirit pills. Yet Lee Yoon-mu had a saint pill inside his body while he was only a mortal. How could heaven-flipping seal's spirit be an opponent for someone who had the power of a divine beast? What I am isn't important. Tell me, how do we get out of here? Quickly speak. Lee Yoon-mu calmly said. The heaven-flipping seal's spirit burst out laughing. Get out? Without this senior, you will remain trapped inside this heaven-flipping seal for all time, never able to have a day of peace. When Lee Yoon-mu saw that the heaven-flipping seal's spirit had no intention of letting them go, he unleashed the explosive thunder kick. It blew the spirit far away. The fiend and vile energies in Lee Yoon-mu's body were gradually dissipating, but the devil energy increased, and his eyes started to turn black. Quickly wake up, the system howled at him. However, Lee Yoon-mu had again been contaminated by the devil energy, and a sinister coldness appeared in his eyes. Since you are sure that you won't let us go, I will personally destroy this space, he said in a cold voice. Heaven-flipping seal's spirit looked at him with disdain. This enchantment is the result of this senior's lifetime effort. You think a little devil like you can destroy it? But Lee Yoon-mu didn't care about it, and his eyes filled with fury. As long as he lost control of his emotions, the energy inside his body would go out of control as well. When fury took over his mind, the vile and fiend energies in his body also began to circulate. At that moment, he seemed to have returned to the terrifying state when he had destroyed the primordial god world. Heaven falls and earth rends. Lee Yoon-mu hadn't used that skill before. After turning into the devil, he kicked and punched the enchantment of the entire heaven-flipping seal while energy fluctuations were left his body one after another. Those shockwaves caused cracks to appear in the surrounding enchantment, and the spirit of the heaven-flipping seal looked at Lee Yoon-mu with bloodshot eyes. This is impossible, it said with astonishment in its voice. The next instant, the spirit of the heaven-flipping seal was suddenly devoured by the power of heaven falls and earth rends. Yoon-mu strived her hardest to defend herself, but her body was still thrown away. At that instant, the ancient secret method lit up with a bright light. Yoon-mu was absorbed inside it, and the red-haired lion spirit beast was forced to retreat before being swallowed. Cracks appeared all over the space as the enchantment collapsed. After the spirit of heaven-flipping seal was devoured, no one could even find the spirit of priest spirit void. After Lee Yoon-mu destroyed the space of heaven-flipping seal, priest spirit void's body appeared in front of him. The man suddenly coughed out a mouthful of blood, and his eyes focused on Lee Yoon-mu with a hint of dread in them. His cultivation had already been destroyed when he was defeated in the heaven-flipping seal, who even lost its spirit. The space of heaven-flipping seal, which he had created after a lot of time, was destroyed as well. You, what exactly are you? Chapter 770, Another Exit. Lee Yoon-mu looked at priest spirit void with derision and said with a cold smile, what I am isn't important anymore. The important thing is that there's no absolute good or evil in this world. You think you were righteous when you beheaded the monsters and devils, but in our eyes, you only did it to fulfill your selfish desires. Lee Yoon-mu's words caused priest spirit void to cough and then spit out a mouthful of blood. He then took a deep breath. On what basis can you say that to me? What kind of good things have you done for the world? What qualifications do you have to speak to me like that? Lee Yoon-mu calmly smiled at him. The so-called helping the commoners is not the same as eliminating the devils and monsters. I even sacrificed my wife to save my people. Could you do that? Priest Spirit Void, since you said you are the so-called justice, what are my actions regarded as? Priest Spirit Void laughed crazily and said, what did you say? You, a demonic devil, is talking to me about protecting your people? Truly ridiculous. Lee Yoon-mu was disinclined to continue the discussion and said, your cultivation has already been destroyed, so I will leave you with your dog *T life. If you continue to hunt down devils and monsters in the future, I will definitely not forgive you. Lee Yoon-mu walked out of the Great Void Monastery with Yoon-mu while leaving the unresigned priest Spirit Void behind. In the beginning, Yuan-Bio had thought that Li Yunmu had lost his reason to defeat the spirit of heaven flipping seal, but when she heard Gun talking about when he rescued his people, she became somewhat suspicious. Why didn't it seem like he had lost all reason? You haven't lost your reason, have you? Ling Yuran had properly adjusted the three energies, Li Yunmu replied. So even if I circulate the energy, I won't lose my mind. Only when the equilibrium between the three energies becomes unstable will I again require Ling Yuran's help to suppress them. Yuan-Bio paused for a moment. Ling Yuran has exhausted her spirit energy, so you mustn't rush to lose your mind. You have to wait until Ling Yuran has recovered her spirit energy. Otherwise, no one will be able to help you. Li Yunmu nodded. I understand that, so let's go. Let's return to Scandinavia now that the primordial god world has been destroyed and the fire seal of the ancient lands has been opened. After returning to the western region, I will definitely remove the remaining seals. Yuan-Bio and Li Yunmu walked out of the ancient lands hand in hand. On their way, they had to go through Crow Soul Valley where Ning was protecting her clansmen. The quickest way out of the eastern domain wasn't through the ocean, rather the central Emperor Mountain. After more than 10 days, they arrived at the exit out of the eastern domain. As long as they passed through it, they would enter the western region and would be very close to the land of ice. Central Emperor Mountain's northern part was covered by ice all year round and was a little similar to the land of ice, but the exit was in a somewhat remote location. When they went to the exit, they unexpectedly found a maze-like forest there. Li Yunmu recalled that when he had just entered the eastern domain, they also encountered a maze at the entrance. Only after traversing through it could they enter the eastern domain. The exit was also similar. Only when they went through the maze would they reach the western region. Moreover, Li Yunmu was certain that beyond the exit to the western region was the land of ice. But then why when he arrived at the eastern domain did the Ocean Mother who was responsible for controlling the Rainbow Bridge send him to another entrance and didn't tell him that the land of ice also had an entrance to the eastern domain? Could it be that there was some secret concealed in the land of ice? Li Yunmu took a deep breath. Since they didn't inform him about that secret, they had to be hiding from the system. The system could understand the suspicion in Li Yunmu's heart, and it said, Odin and the others didn't know that the land of ice was connected to the eastern domain. They have never come to the eastern domain and only know of one entrance, so they weren't aware that there was surprisingly a route through the land of ice as well. The labyrinth-like forest created many inconveniences for Li Yunmu and Yuan-Bio. This forest seems difficult to cross. It would be better if we split up to search for the exit. Bio. Yuan-Bio nodded and said, Then how do we contact each other if we find the exit? Li Yunmu blinked and suddenly thought of something, I have a way. If I will find the exit, then I will recall you into the ancient secret method. If you find the exit, use the ancient secret method to guide me toward you. All right. The two of them separated and went to search for the exit in different directions. The forest was very complex, so searching for the exit was somewhat difficult. It was definitely dangerous as well, so they might encounter another main boss. Li Yunmu quickly walked to the end of the forest, but he still didn't find the exit. And there was also no reaction from the ancient secret method, which he found extremely strange. Could it be that Yuan-Bio also hadn't found an exit? Was that end of the maze also a dead end? No wonder the people of the land of ice didn't know about it. There was basically no exit out of the forest. If they continued like that, they would get trapped inside for who knew how long. Suddenly, there was some movement in the surrounding forest, which startled Li Yunmu. Could the reason behind them being unable to find the exit be because the forest was moving? There was definitely someone controlling the forest, deliberately changing the labyrinth and making them unable to come out. What sort of monster are you and why are you blocking out path? Quickly reveal yourself. Li Yunmu's words were filled with grandeur. It was clear that he didn't want to continue being played by the labyrinth's monster. If he remained trapped there, it would be quite disadvantageous to him. It would be best if the enemy could appear quickly. As long as that enemy was defeated, they could leave the place. If the person operating the forest didn't come out, Yoon-mu decided to simply destroy the forest. But for the time being, he didn't want to use such a violent method. Suddenly, there was a reaction from the ancient secret method, which elated Yoon-mu. Could it be that Yuan-bio had found the exit? If that was truly the case, then it would be for the best. As long as they could leave the place, they would return to Scandinavia. Yoon-mu promptly followed the directions of the ancient secret method and advanced toward Yuan-bio. Even if the forest was continuously changing, it was still unable to obstruct his footsteps.